One of the things we've been talking about is the current situation in Israel, and who better to speak with about that than Israel's ambassador to the United States of America, Ambassador Ron Dermer. Ambassador, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me on your show.
So we understand that the latest out of your nation is that your efforts to demolish the unbelievably vast network of tunnels that the Hamas terrorists had been building in Gaza to gain surreptitious access to your country, they have now been demolished. Is that true?
Yeah, the ones that we know about. Of course, there can always be those we don't know about, but we uncovered a few dozen tunnels, and we decommissioned, effectively destroyed those tunnels in the last we finished destroying them in the last 24 hours or so.
Hey, Ambassador, this is Susan Friccio. I'm real curious what your thoughts are about we're at this 3-day ceasefire now. There's going to be talks in Cairo. What's your expectation for the outcome of these talks?
Well, first of all, let's hope that the ceasefire actually holds, because up until now, ceasefires for Hamas has been that Israel ceases and they continue to fire. We've had about 7 different ceasefires, and it's important that your listeners know that the ceasefire, the conditions for it, which were essentially an unconditional ceasefire, this was what was proposed by Egypt 3 weeks ago. So all of the violence that you've seen over the last 3 weeks could have been avoided had Hamas agreed at the time to that Egyptian proposal that was backed by the Arab League, it was backed by the international community, it was backed by everybody. So everything, all those pictures that have come out of Gaza over the last 3 weeks, and all those the difficult situations that have come about are directly because Hamas just refused to accept the same terms 3 weeks ago that they're accepting now.
Is that going to make things more difficult now in terms of brokering some kind of peace deal? What's going to happen next?
I don't know. I think there's been a change in Egypt for sure, and the current Egyptian government, unlike the previous government under Morsi, I think can be an effective partner at preventing Hamas from simply rearming itself so that we have to face another round of violence in a year and a half. Don't forget, this is the 3rd time that we've had to confront Hamas. The first was at the end of 2008.
Right.
Then there was a second round in November 2012. Now you've had a 3rd round. Well, we don't want to have a 4th round, and in order to make sure that that doesn't happen, we have to find an effective mechanism to ensure that the goods that are coming into Gaza are goods used for the Palestinian people there to build houses and schools and to improve their lives, and not to build this subterranean fortress of tunnels and to use to fuel basically their war machine.
Well, and to that end, Ambassador Dermer, I've got to ask you, everybody keeps saying, we've got to put you on the path to peace and we have to broker a peace deal. Realistically, considering Hamas's charter is that they want to see Israel wiped off the face of the map, they don't think Israel has a right to remain as a Jewish state. They've said that they love death more than the Israelis love life. Can Israel ever really be at peace with a terrorist organization like Hamas in charge of Gaza?
No. Israel can't make peace with those who are committed to our destruction. There was hope that Hamas would change, that they would recognize Israel's right to exist and they would abandon the path of terrorism. But as you say, they continue on that path, and they're very, very clear about it, very open about it. So those people who hope that Hamas will change, it's only a hope. It has nothing to do with the facts. Hamas is essentially Israel's Al-Qaeda. It's no different than a lot of militant Islamist organizations that are now going through the Middle East, not much different than ISIS as well in terms of what they believe. They all have they're all varieties of the same poison tree, all different branches of it. But Hamas is not only committed to our destruction, they call for the murder of Jews worldwide in their charter, as you say. And these are people that were dancing in Gaza when thousands of Americans were dead on 9/11 in New York and Washington.
Ambassador, it sounds like you're not terribly optimistic about these talks. So after 3 days, can we expect the fighting to start up again? Is that sort of what you're saying?
No, I wouldn't say that I'm not optimistic about the talks. The question was, can you make peace with Hamas? I don't think that Hamas is going to be a legitimate interlocutor for any peace. The question is, has Israel, A, achieved deterrence by making clear to Hamas that they will pay a heavy price for waging war against Israel, and by diminishing its capabilities rather considerably, by taking out this tunnel network, by the fact that probably only about 30% of their rocket arsenal remains because they fired about a third of it and we've destroyed another third of it. The question will be, can we create an effective mechanism that will prevent Hamas from rearming itself? And because of the change in Egypt, now we have a partner in the Egyptian government who does not want to see Hamas rearm. The previous Egyptian government did want to see Hamas rearmed. This one does not. And I think that makes for a possibility to create certain conditions that will prevent Hamas from rearming and hopefully improve development within Gaza. As for peace talks, that's something that Israel should conduct only with those Palestinians who are committed to peace with.
Interesting.
Our guest is Ron Dermer. He is Israel's ambassador to the United States. And Ambassador Dermer, I want to play a little audio for you. It'll be really short, but this is yesterday. State Department spokesperson Jen Psaki speaking to CNN.
When you have a situation where innocent civilians are killed in Gaza, there's more that Israel can do to hold themselves to their own standards. And the United States, of all countries, has experienced this in places like Afghanistan. We're saying they need to hold themselves to their own standards and do more here in Gaza.
And at the same time on Sunday, White House advisor Valerie Jarrett was asked about a recent Israeli attack and the way that the White House characterized that attack.
The White House called that attack totally indefensible. It was.
She said it was completely indefensible, but then quickly followed up with this.
Israel absolutely has the right to defend itself, and we are Israel's staunchest ally.
So I play you that combination of things, Ambassador, if I could get your reaction, because it seems to me that you're getting double messages from the administration and from the State Department, and I wonder if the people of Israel, when they hear the criticism of your, in my opinion, completely justifiable actions in defending your nation and the safety of your citizens, when you hear this kind of message from the White House and the Obama administration, and then followed up with, by the way, we're Israel's staunchest ally, are you sensing that you're not getting clear support from the United States?
No. Let me be clear about a few things. First of all, we deeply appreciate the fact that the President, from the beginning of this conflict, has made clear that Israel has a right to defend itself, and he has backed that right, not just with words, but with action. One of those actions happened actually yesterday when he signed the bill that actually increased funding for Iron Dome, our missile defense system. The second thing is we appreciate the efforts by both the President and the Secretary to achieve a sustainable ceasefire. That's what we wanted to begin with. That was the goal of the operation, was to restore quiet and security for an extended period of time for Israel. So we appreciate that. Where the difference has been on the question of civilian casualties, why they came about, and who's responsible for them, and whether Israel can do more. And here there's a disagreement. And it's a disagreement because people don't know all the facts. And what I would ask anyone who would comment on the situation to not rush to judgment until all the facts are in, because what you'll have happen, and this has happened now multiple times during this round, it's also happened in previous rounds, where people will say things about certain actions not knowing all the facts. And then when the facts come in, it's very different. For instance, you had last week, you had an attack that supposedly Israel perpetrated against a hospital and in a refugee camp where a bunch of kids were playing on a playground and were killed. Turns out a couple days later that those attacks were actually not from Israel. They came from Islamic Jihad rockets. Now, as Mark Twain once said, a lie goes halfway around the world before the truth gets its boots on. So it's important before you say things like that to know what the facts are. And beyond that, one other point that's important. This is not Afghanistan and Iraq, because Israel's homeland is being attacked day after day after day. This is all happening when we have two-thirds of our countrymen in bomb shelters.
Yes.
That's a very different reality. No country has faced such a reality, and I can assure you, as somebody born and raised in this country, if 200 million Americans were in bomb shelters, the action the American military would take to defend its population from rockets being fired from contiguous territory by a terror organization would be, and I want to be diplomatic, at least as forceful as the actions that Israel is taking. No country, one last point.
Yes.
I am telling you as somebody who's been in the war room, no country does more than the Israeli Defense Forces to keep the civilians out of the other side, out of harm's way. Unfortunately, we face in Hamas a terror organization that not only targets our civilians, but embeds themselves in hospitals, schools, mosques. They have no innovations whatsoever. And all I would ask for the world to do is wait until all the facts come in. Then when you see the facts, you will have a very different impression of Israel's action.
Ambassador Ron Dermer, so very good to have you, and we hope to have you on again as this story continues to develop. Thanks for